The massive halls of the Galactic Council building were filled with worried voices and nervous movement. Representatives from dozens of alien species had gathered for an emergency meeting. The Vorthok delegate, a tall creature with blue skin and 4 arms, stood at the center podium. His voice shook as he played the transmission that had reached them just hours ago. The message came from the Hellion people, a peaceful race known throughout the galaxy for their art and music. Their voices were desperate, filled with terror, as they begged for help. Their beautiful homeworld was burning. The Morvac Empire had arrived without warning, bringing death and destruction to their peaceful cities. "Please, anyone who can hear this message," the Hellion leader's voice crackled through the speakers. "Our people are dying. Children are trapped in the burning cities. We have no weapons, no way to fight back. If there is any mercy left in this galaxy, please help us." The council members listened in uncomfortable silence. Everyone knew about the Morvac Empire. They were brutal conquerors who showed no mercy to anyone who stood in their way. They had destroyed 12 other civilizations in the past 50 years, turning thriving worlds into empty wastelands. The Zentari representative, a small creature with green scales, spoke first. "This is tragic, but what can we do?" The Morvac fleet is massive. They have over 300 warships surrounding the Hellion homeworld. Our combined forces would not be enough to stop them. Other council members nodded in agreement. The Corvian delegate suggested sending medical supplies after the battle was over. The Nixari representative offered to accept refugees, but only a small number. Everyone had excuses. Everyone had reasons why they could not help. Meanwhile, far from the Galactic Council, something incredible was happening on Earth. The Hellion distress signal had somehow reached the human monitoring stations. In the outer solar system, the message had been automatically decoded by Earth's advanced computer systems. Admiral Kim Taho stood in the command center of Earth's Deep Space Defense Force. He was a veteran of humanity's colonial wars, a man who had seen too much death and destruction. His dark eyes were fixed on the holographic display showing the alien transmission. Around him, dozens of human technicians worked at their stations. Analyzing every detail of the message, the footage from the Hellion homeworld was heartbreaking. Peaceful cities were being reduced to ash. Families were running through burning streets, trying to escape the Morvac bombing raids. Children were crying for parents who would never come home. Lieutenant Park Nari, a young officer with short black hair, approached the admiral with a data tablet in her hands. She had been working for 6 hours straight, decoding the alien languages and analyzing the enemy fleet composition. "Sir, I have the full report," she said, her voice tired but professional. "The Morvac Empire has deployed their 3rd conquest fleet to the Hellion system. They have 312 warships, including 47 heavy cruisers and 8 dreadnought-class vessels. The Hellion Defense Force was destroyed in the first day of fighting." Admiral Kim studied the numbers on the tablet. The Morvac fleet was enormous, equipped with advanced weapons and shields. By galactic standards, they were unstoppable. Any civilized species would declare the situation hopeless and offer prayers for the dead. "What about our response options?" the admiral asked. Lieutenant Park hesitated. "Sir, standard galactic protocol would be to offer humanitarian aid after the conflict ends. We could send medical supplies and refugee ships. The Galactic Council will probably form a committee to discuss the situation, but that could take months." The admiral's jaw tightened as he watched more footage from the dying world. Morvac soldiers were hunting down civilians in the streets. Entire families were being executed without mercy. The peaceful Hellion people had no weapons, no way to defend themselves against such brutality. "Sir, what are your orders?" Lieutenant Park asked quietly. Admiral Kim turned away from the display and looked at his command staff. These were humans who had grown up on Earth, a world where only the strongest survived. They had evolved from predators, and that predator instinct was still buried deep in their DNA. "Prepare the fleet, Lieutenant," he said in a voice cold as space itself. "We're not following standard protocol this time." The room fell silent. Everyone knew what this meant. Humanity was going to war. Within minutes of Admiral Kim's order, alarms began blaring throughout Earth's military installations. The United Earth Defense Force had trained for this moment their entire existence, but they had never expected to face an alien enemy. Now humanity's war machine was awakening with deadly purpose. The Admiral walked quickly through the corridors of the main command base, his boots echoing against the metal floors. Officers rushed past him, carrying urgent reports and battle plans. The entire facility hummed with activity as thousands of personnel prepared for humanity's first interstellar war. Admiral Kim's first stop was the fleet assembly hangar, where his most trusted captain waited. Captain Lee Min-ho stood beside the massive viewing window, watching as the flagship UES Vengeance was loaded with weapons and supplies. The ship was a monster of human engineering, built for one purpose: destroying enemies in the most efficient way possible. Captain Lee, the Admiral called out, "Are you ready for this?" Captain Lee turned around, his weathered face showing no emotion. He had fought in the Martian Rebellion, the Asteroid Belt Wars, and countless other conflicts. His uniform was covered with medals earned through blood and sacrifice. "My crew is ready, sir," he replied simply. "We've been waiting for a real fight." The two men stood in silence, watching as the Vengeance's weapon systems were loaded with humanity's most advanced ammunition. The ship's armor was thick enough to withstand nuclear blasts, and its engines could push it faster than any other vessel in human space. But the Vengeance was not alone. Admiral Kim had assembled the deadliest fleet in human history. The heavy cruisers U.S. Retribution and U.S. Fury flanked the flagship, their hulls bristling with missile launchers and energy weapons. Behind them came 12 destroyer-class vessels, fast and deadly, designed to hunt down fleeing enemies. The crews boarding these ships were not ordinary soldiers. They were veterans of Earth's endless conflicts, men and women who had been shaped by centuries of warfare. Humanity had never known true peace. Even after reaching the stars, humans had fought wars on Mars, in the asteroid belt, and on the colony worlds. Commander Young So-young worked tirelessly in the tactical planning center aboard the Vengeance. She was surrounded by holographic displays, showing detailed scans of Morvac warships. Her team of analysts worked like a well-oiled machine, breaking down every aspect of the enemy fleet. "The Morvac ships are built for intimidation," she explained to her staff. "They're massive, heavily armored, but they have blind spots. Their weapon systems are powerful, but slow to target. They're designed to fight other civilized species who follow the rules of war." Her assistant, a young lieutenant named Choi Dong-woo, highlighted weak points on the enemy ship designs. "Their shield generators are located here and here," he pointed out. "If we can hit these spots simultaneously, their defenses will collapse." Commander Yang nodded approvingly. Humans had learned something that other species had forgotten. Every enemy had weaknesses. Every weakness could be exploited. Earth's history was filled with stories of smaller forces defeating larger ones through superior tactics and ruthless determination. As the hours passed, more disturbing news arrived from the Hellion system. The alien broadcasts were becoming more desperate with each passing minute. Entire cities were being reduced to ash. The Morvac forces were not just conquering the planet. They were systematically destroying every trace of Hellion civilization. "Yes, sir. We're receiving the latest transmission," reported Communications Officer Park Ginwoo. His voice was tight with anger as he played the message for the command staff. The holographic display showed Hellion families running through burning streets. Children were crying for parents who would never come home. Peaceful aliens had no weapons, no way to defend themselves against the Morvac brutality. Captain Lee watched the footage with cold fury building in his chest. He had seen many horrors in his military career, but the systematic murder of innocent civilians always struck him deeply. These Morvac creatures were not warriors, they were butchers. "How long until we can launch?" he asked his engineering officer. 30 minutes, sir. The hyperspace drives are almost ready." Captain Lee nodded and turned to address his bridge crew. These were people he had fought alongside for years, men and women who shared his dedication to protecting the innocent. They had trained together, bled together, and now they would fight together in humanity's first interstellar war. "Listen up," he said in a voice that carried to every corner of the bridge. "We're about to face an enemy that thinks they can murder innocent people without consequences. They're about to learn why that's a mistake. We have one objective: complete annihilation of the Morvac forces. No survivors, no mercy, no quarter given."
How the crew responded with grim determination. How they understood.
What was at stake? This was not just about saving the Helian people. It was about announcing humanity's presence to the galaxy in the most dramatic way possible. The human fleet launched into the void, carrying with them the concentrated violence of Earth's most dangerous species. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and facing an enemy with superior technology, but they had something the Morvac Empire had never encountered: the Ruthless. Determination of apex predators from a death world. The silence of hyperspace was broken as the human fleet suddenly materialized. At the edge of the Helian system, 15 warships appeared from nowhere, their dark holes barely visible against the starfield. They moved with deadly purpose. It's like a pack of wolves entering a hunting ground. Admiral Kim stood on the bridge of the UES Vengeance, his eyes fixed. On the tactical display showing the carnage below, the Helian homeworld was dying. Massive Morvac dreadnoughts hung in orbit like metal vultures, their weapons raining death upon the surface. Bright flashes of light marked where entire cities had been reduced to ashdot. The sight was horrifying. Morvac ships were systematically destroying every major population center on the planet. They were not trying to conquer or occupy the world. They were erasing an entire civilization from existence. The few remaining Helion defense ships were barely functional, their shields failing, their weapons doing no damage to the massive enemy. "Vessels, my God," whispered Lieutenant Park Nari, staring at the destruction. "They're not even trying to preserve anything. They're just killing everything that moves." Admiral Kim's jaw tightened as he watched the systematic genocide unfolding before him. This was worse than anything he had seen in human conflicts. Even during Earth's most brutal wars, there had been rules, limits to the violence. Morvac Empire had no such restraints. Suddenly, Communications Officer Choi Min-soo looked up from his station with surprise. "Admiral, we're receiving transmissions from multiple sources. The Morvac fleet is demanding we identify ourselves and state our intentions. They're also asking about our diplomatic credentials." The officer paused, checking his instruments again. "Sir, the surviving Helian ships are also trying to contact us. They're begging us to leave before we're destroyed too." Admiral Kim listened to the alien voices crackling through the communication system. The Morvac commander spoke in a cold, mechanical tone, demanding that the human fleet follow proper first contact protocols. According to galactic law, any new species entering a conflict zone must first announce their intentions and seek permission from the aggressor force. The Helian transmissions were heartbreaking. Their commander, speaking in broken universal language, was pleading with the humans to escape while they still could. He did not want another species to die trying to save his doomed people. "Sir, what should I tell them?" asked Officer Choi. Admiral Kim studied the tactical display with the focus of a predator selecting its prey. The Morvac fleet was arranged in a standard bombardment formation, with their largest ships positioned to rain destruction on the planet below. Their command vessels were clearly marked, broadcasting orders to the smaller ships. "Sir," Officer Choi repeated. "They're demanding an immediate response." "Ignore all communications," Admiral Kim said quietly. "Begin target acquisition on their command structure." The bridge fell silent. Every officer understood what this meant. They were about to attack without warning, without negotiation, without following any of the established rules of galactic warfare. Captain Lee, monitoring the situation from his command position, felt obligated to speak up. "Sir, galactic law requires us to attempt diplomatic contact before engaging in hostile action. We're supposed to identify ourselves, state our intentions, and give them a chance to withdraw." Admiral Kim turned to face his captain, his eyes cold. "As space itself, Captain, look at that planet. Look at what they're doing to innocent people. Galactic law doesn't apply to genocidal monsters." The Admiral's voice carried throughout the bridge, reaching every member of the crew. "These creatures are not soldiers fighting a war. their butchers murdering helpless civilians. They've forfeited any right to diplomatic protection. Captain Lee nodded slowly. He had been trained to follow protocol, to respect the rules of engagement. But he had also been trained to protect the innocent, and the Morvac Empire was committing the worst crime imaginable. Battle stations, Admiral Kim ordered. All ships prepare for immediate attack. We're ending this now. Human fleet began moving into attack formation, their movements coordinated and deadly. Unlike the Morvac vessels, which were designed for intimidation and overwhelming firepower, the human ships were built for precision and efficiency. Commander Yang Soyoung worked frantically at her tactical station, coordinating the attack plan. Her team had identified the key targets: command ships, communication relays, and supply vessels. They would strike simultaneously, crippling the enemy's ability to coordinate their defense. Target acquisition complete, she reported. All ships are locked onto their primary objectives. The communications officer made one final attempt to follow procedure. Sir, the Morvac commander is threatening to destroy the remaining Hellion cities if we don't withdraw immediately. Admiral Kim's response was swift and final. Then we'll have to destroy them before they get the chance. The human fleet moved into final attack position, bypassing every diplomatic protocol in existence. They had not identified themselves, had not stated their intentions, and had not given the enemy any opportunity to surrender. By galactic standards, they were about to commit an act of unprecedented aggression, but the humans did not care about galactic standards. They cared about stopping genocide. They were willing to become the galaxy's villains to save innocent lives. The predators from Earth were about to announce their presence to the universe in the most dramatic way possible. Admiral Vexstar of the Morvac Empire stood in the command center of his flagship, a massive dreadnought called the Death's Herald. He was a veteran of 43 successful conquests, a warrior who had crushed every species that dared oppose his empire. His forearms moved gracefully as he studied the tactical display showing the approaching human vessels. 15 ships, he said with amusement, his voice carrying the confidence of countless victories. These newcomers must be even more foolish than the others. His tactical officer, a younger Morvac with silver skin, nodded in agreement. Sir, we've faced similar intervention attempts before. Zentari sent 20 ships to help the Corvians. The Nexari coalition sent 30 vessels to defend the Qualian homeworld. We destroyed them all within hours. Admiral Vexstar's mandibles clicked together in what passed for laughter among his species. The Morvac Empire had perfected the art of intimidation warfare. Their ships were enormous, bristling with weapons, designed to terrify enemies into submission. Most civilized species took one look at a Morvac fleet and immediately surrendered. These humans must be a young species, he mused. They probably think their noble intentions will somehow protect them from reality. The Admiral turned his attention back to the planet below, where his forces were methodically destroying the last Hellion cities. The operation was proceeding perfectly. Within another day, the Hellion species would be extinct, and their world would be ready for Morvac colonization. The human vessels are moving into attack formation, reported his sensor operator. They're not responding to our communication demands. Admiral Vexstar was mildly annoyed. Every civilized species followed the same pattern when facing the Morvac Empire. First, they would attempt diplomatic contact. Then, they would issue threats and demands. Finally, they would engage in a brief, hopeless battle before being destroyed. Perhaps their communication systems are primitive, he suggested. No matter. Begin standard intimidation protocol. Fire warning shots across their formation. The massive Morvac vessels began turning their weapons toward the human fleet. Their gun turrets moved slowly, designed more for terrifying enemies than for actual combat efficiency. Against other civilized species, this display of overwhelming firepower was usually enough to end conflicts before they began, but the humans were not like other species. Commander Yang Soyoung watched the Morvac vessels from her position aboard the UES Vengeance. Her tactical team had been analyzing enemy movements for the past 20 minutes, and what they had discovered was fascinating. The Morvac ships are incredibly slow, she reported to Admiral Kim. Their turning radius is massive, and their weapon Systems take almost 30 seconds to target new threats. They're built for fighting enemies who follow conventional space combat rules. Her assistant, Lieutenant Choi Dongwoo, highlighted the enemy formation on the tactical display. Sir, they're arranging themselves in a standard intimidation pattern. They expect us to approach slowly, exchange long-range fire, and eventually retreat when we realize we're outgunned. Admiral Kim smiled grimly. Show them what happens when they face predators instead of prey. The human fleet suddenly exploded into motion, moving with a speed and agility that shocked the Morvac observers. The ships dove and twisted through space, pulling maneuvers that would have been impossible for any other species in the galaxy. Aboard the UES Fury, Captain Park Hyun-woo felt the crushing force of 23 times Earth's gravity as his ship spun through a complex evasion pattern. Its crew remained at their stations, their faces strained but determined. Every human aboard had been born and raised on Earth, a world with gravity so intense that it had forged them into living weapons. All stations report ready, called out his weapons officer, Lieutenant Kim Jae-sung.
Oh.
His voice steady, despite the crushing forces trying to tear him apart. The Morvac crews watched in horror as the human ships performed impossible maneuvers. The alien vessels twisted and dove at angles that should have killed everyone aboard. No known species could survive such extreme gravitational forces. What are they doing? Admiral Vexter demanded, his confidence beginning to crack. Those maneuvers are impossible. His tactical officer was frantically trying to target the human ships. But they were moving too fast, changing direction too quickly. The Morvac weapon systems, designed for fighting slow, predictable enemies, could not keep up with the human vessels. The first human attack came without warning. The UES Retribution dove straight through the center of the Morvac formation, its weapons blazing. Ship moved so fast that the Morvac gunners could not track it, and its crew endured gravitational forces that would have liquefied any other species. Commander Young So-young coordinated the assault with mechanical precision. Her team had identified the weak points in every Morvac vessel, and now they exploited those weaknesses with ruthless efficiency. Target their shield generators, she ordered. Hit them simultaneously from multiple angles. The human ship struck, like a pack of wolves, attacking from every direction at once. They moved through the Morvac formation like deadly ghosts, appearing and disappearing before the enemy could react. The first engagement lasted exactly 7 minutes. When it was over, the Morvac Empire had lost 78 ships, including 2 dreadnoughts and 5 heavy cruisers. The humans had not lost a single vessel. Admiral Vextar stared at his tactical display in disbelief. In 43 successful conquests, he had never seen anything like this. The humans fought like creatures from a nightmare, moving with impossible speed and striking with devastating precision. Sir, his communications officer said in a shaking voice, we're receiving casualty reports from across the fleet. The humans... They're not fighting like any known species. They're fighting like... like demons. The Admiral's confidence had completely evaporated. These were not the weak intervention forces he had grown accustomed to crushing. These were predators from a death world, and they had brought hell to his perfect conquest. Admiral Vextar's flagship shuddered as another human attack tore through his defensive lines. The Death's Herald had taken multiple hits, and emergency lights flickered throughout the command center. His perfect conquest was turning into a nightmare, and he was running out of options. Sir, we've lost contact with the 3rd battle group, reported his tactical officer, his voice filled with panic. The humans destroyed 12 ships in the last 10 minutes. Our formations are completely broken. The Admiral's forearms trembled with rage and fear. In his 43 conquests, he had never faced an enemy like this. The humans fought with a brutality and efficiency that defied everything he knew about civilized warfare. They moved like predators, striking from impossible angles and disappearing. Before his ships could respond, deploy the civilian shield protocol, he ordered desperately. Position our remaining vessels above the major population centers. If these humans want to save the Helians, they'll have to go through innocent civilians to reach us. The Morvac fleet began repositioning, moving their massive ships directly over the burning Helian cities. The strategy was simple but effective. Any attack on Morvac vessels would result in massive civilian casualties. Most civilized species would be forced to halt their assault rather than risk innocent lives. Admiral Vexstar opened a communication channel to the human fleet. His voice, carrying across the void, "Unknown vessels, identify yourselves immediately. Cease your attack or we will execute the remaining population of this planet." He paused, trying to project the confidence he no longer felt. "We are willing to negotiate. State your terms, and we can reach a peaceful resolution to this conflict." The transmission was received aboard the UES Vengeance, where Admiral Kim listened with cold fury. Around him, his bridge crew watched the tactical display showing Morvac ships hovering over defenseless cities. The alien strategy was clear. They were using innocent people as human shields. "Sir," said Communications Officer Choi Min-soo, "the Morvac commander is demanding we halt our attack. He's threatening to destroy the remaining civilian centers. If we advance..." Admiral Kim studied the display with the calculating mind of a predator. The Morvac had positioned their ships with surgical precision, making it seemingly impossible to attack them without causing massive casualties among the people they were trying to save. "Sir, what are your orders?" asked Captain Lee from his position at the tactical station. Admiral Kim's response was swift and merciless. "Lieutenant Park, target their weapon systems. Surgical strikes only." The bridge fell silent. Every officer understood what the Admiral was ordering. They were going to attack enemy ships positioned directly over civilian populations, requiring a level of precision that seemed impossible. Lieutenant Park Nari's hands moved quickly over her targeting controls. "Sir, the margin for error is almost zero. If we miss by even a few meters, we could hit civilian areas. Then we won't miss." Admiral Kim replied with absolute certainty. The human fleet began moving into attack positions with mechanical precision. Commander Yang Soi-young coordinated the assault from her tactical station, her team analyzing every angle, every possible trajectory. They had seconds to calculate shots that would destroy enemy vessels while leaving the cities below untouched. "Ships, prepare for precision strikes," she announced. "Target lock on Morvac weapon systems only. We're going to thread the needle." Captain Lee watched his weapons officer, Lieutenant Kim Jae-sung, as he prepared the most difficult shots of his career. The young officer's hands were steady despite the enormous pressure. He had trained for situations like this his entire life, but never imagined he would face such a challenge. "Target acquired," he reported. "Ready to fire on your command." Human ships struck with inhuman precision. Their weapons found the exact weak points in Morvac armor, penetrating shields and destroying gun turrets while leaving the cities below completely untouched. It was like watching a master surgeon operate, each strike measured and perfectly executed. The first Morvac ship to fall was the heavy cruiser Bone Crusher, hovering over the Helian capital city. Human missiles struck its weapon systems with surgical accuracy, crippling its guns without damaging the populated areas below. The massive ship began listing to one side, its crew scrambling to maintain control. "Impossible," whispered Admiral Vexstar, watching his ships being systematically destroyed. "No species can shoot with that kind of accuracy." But the humans had turned violence into an art form. They had learned their deadly skills through centuries of warfare on Earth, where precision and efficiency meant the difference between victory and extinction. Every shot was calculated. Every strike planned to achieve maximum damage with minimum collateral destruction. The human fleet moved through the Morvac formation like deadly ghosts, appearing and disappearing before the enemy could react. They targeted supply ships, communication relays, and command structures with calculated brutality. Each strike was measured, efficient, and absolutely lethal. Within 30 minutes, the Morvac had lost another 47 ships. The humans had not harmed a single civilian, despite fighting in the most challenging conditions imaginable. They had achieved what should have been impossible, perfect precision in the chaos of battle. Admiral Vexstar realized with growing horror that his shield strategy had failed completely. The humans were not like other species. They did not hesitate, did not negotiate, did not show mercy to those who threatened innocent lives. "Sir," his communications officer reported, "we're receiving damage reports from across the fleet. The humans are destroying our ships faster than we can repair them. The admiral stared at his tactical display, watching his perfect conquest crumble around him. These humans were not just superior fighters. They were artists of destruction, creatures who had mastered the science of war. His empire was about to learn why you should never threaten civilians in front of predators from a death world. The reality of what they faced began to sink in as surviving Morvac officers shared desperate reports across their communication networks. These were not the weak, civilized species they had grown accustomed to crushing. The humans moved with a deadly efficiency that spoke of something far more dangerous than advanced technology. Captain Zeekmer of the Morvac cruiser Iron Fist had survived 32 battles across the galaxy. He had seen the best warriors from dozens of species, had watched entire civilizations fall before the Empire's might. But as he watched the human ships tear through his fleet, he felt a primal fear that he had never experienced before. "Sir, they're not fighting like any known species," reported his tactical officer, his voice shaking. "They're not following any civilized rules of engagement. They're fighting like wild animals." The comparison was more accurate than he realized. Humans had evolved on Earth, a world so hostile that only the most adaptable and ruthless creatures could survive. Every human aboard those ships carried the genetics memory of millions of years of evolutionary warfare, the first indication of just how different humans came when the damaged Morvac destroyer Void Reaper found itself crippled and defenseless. Its engines were destroyed, its weapons offline, its crew preparing to surrender according to galactic law. They expected to be taken prisoner, processed according to civilized standards, and eventually exchanged or released. They were catastrophically wrong. The human assault shuttle approached the Void Reaper with predatory silence. Inside, Sergeant Han Wujin checked his weapons one final time. He was a veteran of the Titan colony wars, a man who had learned to fight in the most brutal conditions imaginable. His squad consisted of 12 other humans, each one a specialist in close-quarters combat. "Remember," he said to his team, "these creatures were murdering innocent civilians 10 minutes ago. They're not prisoners of war. They're war criminals." Shuttle docked with the Morvac vessel, and the human boarding party moved with mechanical precision. They wore black combat armor that made them look like death itself. They carried weapons designed for maximum lethality in confined spaces. First group of Morvac soldiers they encountered tried to surrender, raising their forearms in the universal gesture of defeat. Sergeant Han looked at them with cold eyes, remembering the footage of burning Hellion cities, of families torn apart by Morvac brutality. "No prisoners," he said quietly. The battle that followed was unlike anything in galactic history. The humans moved through the ship like a plague of destruction, using combat techniques that had been perfected in Earth's countless wars. They fought with knives when their guns ran out of ammunition, with their bare hands when their knives broke. With a savage efficiency that terrified even veteran warriors, Morvac soldiers were larger and stronger than humans. But they had never faced opponents who fought with such ruthless determination. The humans used every trick learned from centuries of warfare, ambush tactics, psychological warfare, and a complete disregard for their own safety that bordered on insanity. Within 20 minutes, the Void Reaper was silent. News of the boarding action spread through the Morvac fleet like wildfire. Ship captains who had never known fear began to panic as they realized what they were facing. These humans were not just superior fighters. They were perfectly adapted killing machines who showed no mercy to those who threatened innocent lives. "Sir, we're receiving distress calls from across the fleet," reported Admiral Vexstar's communications officer. "The humans are boarding our damaged vessels. They're not taking prisoners." The Admiral watched his tactical display with growing horror. Red indicators showed ship after ship, falling silent as human boarding parties swept through his fleet. These creatures fought like demons, using tactics that violated every civilized rule of warfare. Captain Morthic, of the heavy cruiser Death Shadow, managed to transmit a final message before his ship went dark. "They're not like us. They're not civilized. They fight like predators, like creatures born for war. May the gods help us all." The human boarding parties moved from ship to ship with mechanical precision. They had no interest in capturing territory or taking prisoners. Their mission was simple: eliminate every Morvac vessel that had participated in the genocide of the Hellion people. Sergeant Han's team had cleared 4 ships in 2 hours, each one a testament to human efficiency in close combat. His soldiers moved like ghosts through the enemy vessels, appearing and disappearing before the Morvac crews could organize effective resistance. Sergeant called out Corporal Kim Min-jun. "We've secured the engine room. No survivors." The young soldier's face was splattered with alien blood, but his eyes remained cold and professional. He had been born on Mars, raised in the harsh conditions of a frontier world where only the strong survived. "Good work," Sergeant Han replied. "Move to the next target." The human assault continued with relentless efficiency. They had brought to space the same savage determination that had allowed their species to conquer Earth's hostile environment. Every human aboard those ships was a descendant of apex predators, creatures who had climbed to the top of the food chain through superior intelligence and ruthless aggression. Admiral Star realized with growing terror that his empire had awakened something that should have been left alone. These humans were not just another species to be conquered. They were the galaxy's ultimate predators. They had finally found prey worthy of their attention. As ship after ship fell silent, surviving Morvac began to understand the terrible truth. They had not encountered a rescue fleet. They had encountered the hunters of the universe. And the hunt had only just begun. Admiral Vexstar stared at his tactical display with growing desperation. His once mighty fleet had been reduced to fewer than 60 ships, scattered and broken across the Helion system. The humans had torn through his forces like a hurricane, destroying everything in their path with terrifying efficiency. "Prepare for emergency withdrawal," he ordered his remaining captains. "All ships, form up for retreat formation. We're leaving this system immediately." The surviving Morvac vessels began moving toward the edge of the star system, their engines straining to reach escape velocity. Admiral Vexstar had commanded conquests across the galaxy, but he had never faced an enemy like this. The humans fought with a brutality that defied every rule of civilized warfare. "Sir, we're detecting human ships moving to intercept," reported his tactical officer, his voice filled with panic. "They're positioning themselves along our retreat routes." Admiral Vexstar's blood ran cold as he realized what was happening. The humans had not simply reacted to his retreat. They had anticipated it. While his attention was focused on the battle, they had quietly positioned their vessels to cut off every possible escape route. "Impossible," he whispered. "How could they have known?" The answer was simple but terrifying. The humans had studied his fleet's movements, analyzed his tactical patterns, and predicted his responses with mathematical precision. They had not just come to fight. They had come to ensure total annihilation aboard the UES Vengeance. Admiral Kim watched the final phase of the battle unfold with cold satisfaction. His fleet had performed exactly as planned, herding the surviving Morvac vessels into a perfectly orchestrated trap. "All ships report ready," announced Commander Young So-young from her tactical station. "The enemy fleet is completely surrounded. No escape routes remain." Admiral Kim nodded grimly. This was the moment he had been preparing for since the first distress signal reached Earth. The Morvac Empire would learn that genocide carried a price, and that price was extinction. "Begin final assault," he ordered. "Eliminate all remaining targets. No survivors." The human fleet moved with mechanical precision, closing in on the trapped Morvac vessels like the jaws of a steel trap. Each ship had been assigned specific targets, and they executed their orders with the efficiency of a well-oiled machine. "Captain." Lee's gunners aboard the UES Vengeance opened fire on the Morvac flagship, their weapons striking with deadly accuracy. The Death's Herald, Admiral Vexstar's mighty dreadnought, shuddered under the concentrated assault. Its shields collapsed within minutes, and secondary explosions began tearing through its hull. "Sir, we're taking critical damage," reported the flagship's engineering officer. "Hull breaches on decks 4 through 7. We're losing atmosphere." Admiral Vexstar watched helplessly as his command ship died around him. Emergency lights flickered throughout the bridge as system after system failed. The humans had targeted His vessel was surgical precision, striking at the most vulnerable points with devastating effect. "Send a surrender signal," he ordered desperately. "Tell them we yield. We're willing to discuss terms." His communications officer shook his head sadly. "Sir, they're not responding to any transmissions. I don't think they're interested in surrender." A terrible truth began to sink in. The humans had not come to negotiate or to accept surrender. They had come to ensure that every Morvac vessel that participated in the genocide of the Hellion people would be destroyed. Across the star system, the systematic destruction continued. The human ships moved from target to target with deadly efficiency, eliminating each Morvac vessel with calculated precision. They showed no mercy, took no prisoners, and ignored all attempts at surrender. The heavy cruiser Bone Crusher exploded in a brilliant flash of light. A crew of 3,000 vaporized in an instant. The destroyer Bloodfang tried to ram a human vessel in a desperate final attack, but was intercepted and destroyed before it could reach its target. On the surface of the dying Helian homeworld, the survivors watched the battle with a mixture of awe and terror. They had prayed for salvation, but they had never expected it to come in such a brutal form. The humans fought like creatures from their darkest nightmares, showing no emotion as they systematically exterminated their enemies. Elder Thion, one of the few surviving Helian leaders, watched the battle from his emergency bunker. "Who are these humans?" he asked his advisors. "They fight like death itself." The answer was more accurate than he realized. The humans had evolved on a world where only the most ruthless survivors could thrive. They had brought that savage efficiency to the stars, and they were demonstrating why Earth was considered the most dangerous planet in the galaxy. Admiral Vextar's flagship finally succumbed to the relentless assault. The Death's Herald broke apart in a series of massive explosions, taking with it the commander who had orchestrated the genocide of 12 civilizations. As the last Morvac ship fell silent, Admiral Kim surveyed the battlefield with grim satisfaction. The star system was littered with debris and wreckage, but not a single human vessel had been lost. They had achieved total victory with minimal casualties. "Sir, all enemy contacts had been eliminated," reported Commander Yang. "The Morvac fleet has been completely destroyed." Admiral Kim nodded slowly. The first phase of humanity's intervention was complete. The Morvac Empire had learned that there were consequences for genocide, and those consequences were absolute and final. The humans had turned extermination into an exact science, and they had just given the galaxy its first lesson in how apex predators dealt with those who threatened innocent lives. The silence that followed the destruction of the Morvac fleet was broken only by the crackling of damaged communication systems and the distant groans of dying starships. Admiral Kim stood on the bridge of the UES Vengeance, watching the debris field that had once been the third conquest fleet of the Morvac Empire. "Sir, boarding teams are reporting successful data extraction from the enemy flagship," announced Lieutenant Park Nari. "We've recovered their central database before the ship was completely destroyed." Admiral Kim nodded grimly. Information contained in those alien computers would be invaluable. The humans needed to understand the full scope of the Morvac Empire's crimes before deciding their next move. Commander Yang So-young worked frantically at her station, decoding the captured alien data with the help of Earth's most advanced computer systems. What she discovered made her blood run cold.
Oh, yeah.
"Sir, you need to see this," she called out, her voice tight with anger. The holographic display flickered to life, showing star charts marked with red indicators. Each symbol represented a world that had fallen to Morvac conquest, and there were dozens of them scattered across the galaxy. "The Corvian homeworld," Commander Yang explained, pointing to one of the markers. "Population, 4 billion. Status, extinct. The Morvac destroyed them 18 months ago." She moved to another indicator, the Zentari colonies. "Population 2 billion. Status, enslaved. The survivors are being used as forced labor in Morvac mining operations." The list continued, each entry more horrifying than the last. The Morvac Empire had not just conquered these worlds, they had systematically destroyed entire civilizations, wiping out species that had existed for millions of years. How many? Admiral Kim asked quietly. 47 worlds conquered in the last 10 years, Commander Yang replied. 12 species completely extinct. 23 others reduced to slavery. The Morvek Empire is conducting genocide on a galactic scale. Bridge fell silent as the crew absorbed this information. They had come to save one world, but they had discovered a pattern of destruction that spanned half the galaxy. Lieutenant Choi Min-soo, the communications officer, looked up from his station with concern. We're detecting incoming transmissions. From across the galaxy, news of our intervention is spreading through the communication networks. Admiral Kim studied the tactical display, his mind racing through the implications. The destruction of the Morvac fleet would not go unnoticed. Other species would want to know who these humans were and what they intended to do next. "Sir, what are your orders?" asked Captain Lee. Admiral Kim made a decision that would change the course of galactic history. Open a channel to all frequencies. Maximum broadcast power. I want every species in the galaxy to hear this message. The communications officer's hands moved quickly. Over his controls. Channel open, sir. You're broadcasting to the entire galaxy? Admiral Kim stepped forward, his voice carrying the authority of Earth's combined military forces. But it was communications officer Choi Min-soo who would deliver the message that would reshape galactic politics forever. "This is Admiral Kim Tae-ho of the United Earth Defense Force," the admiral began. "We have just eliminated the Morvac Third Conquest Fleet in the Hellion system. Now, this was not a rescue mission. This was a demonstration." He paused, letting his words sink in across the galaxy. "Officer Choi, deliver our message to the Morvac Empire and all listening species." Communications officer Choi Min-soo stepped forward, his voice cold and precise as he delivered humanity's declaration to the universe. "To any force that targets innocent populations, you now face humanity. We do not negotiate with genocidal regimes. We do not show mercy to those who show none. Attack the defenseless and face extinction." The message was simple, direct, and absolutely terrifying. In less than 50 words, the humans had announced their presence to the galaxy and established their position as protectors of the innocent. "Furthermore," Officer Choi continued, "we have obtained evidence of Morvac crimes against 47 worlds. The Empire's campaign of genocide ends now. Any Morvac vessel found in the territory of a peaceful species will be destroyed without warning." The transmission ended, leaving the galaxy in stunned silence. In the space of a few hours, an unknown species had appeared, destroyed one of the most powerful fleets in the galaxy, and declared war on genocide itself. Aboard the UES Vengeance, Admiral Kim watched the communication networks light up with panicked chatter. Species across the galaxy were trying to understand what had just happened and what it meant for their future, sir, asked Captain Lee. "Are we really prepared to take on the entire Morvac Empire?" Admiral Kim smiled grimly. "Captain, we're humans. We've been preparing for this fight our entire evolutionary history." The message had been sent. The galaxy now knew that Earth's apex predators had entered the cosmic arena, and they had brought their own rules of engagement. The age of unchecked aggression was over. The age of human justice had begun. The smoking ruins of the Hellion capital. Cities still glowed with the heat of recent destruction, but life was stirring again among the survivors. Elder Thion, his silver robes torn and stained with ash, led a small group of Hellion representatives toward the human landing craft that had just touched down on the planet's surface. "We must thank them," he said to his companions, his voice filled with emotion. "These humans saved our entire species from extinction. Without them, we would all be dead." The Hellion delegation approached the landing craft with reverence, carrying traditional gifts of gratitude, expected to find their saviors celebrating their victory, perhaps preparing for a grand ceremony to mark the liberation of their world instead. They found humans working with mechanical efficiency to reload supplies and prepare for immediate departure. Admiral Kim stood beside his shuttle, reviewing tactical reports on a portable display. His face showed no satisfaction, no sense of accomplishment. To him, this was simply the first step in a much larger operation. Admiral Elder Theon called out, his translator device converting his words into human language. "We have come to thank you for saving our people. How can we ever repay such a gift?" Admiral Kim looked up from his reports, his expression serious. "Elder, the best way to honor our efforts is to rebuild your world and live in peace. We ask for nothing in return." The Hylian leader was confused. "But surely you will stay to help us establish order? To help us rebuild our defenses?" "That is not our mission," Admiral Kim replied. "We have identified 17 more systems under Morvac occupation. Millions of innocent people are dying while we speak. We cannot delay." Elder Thion's eyes widened with understanding. These humans had not come to liberate just one world. They had come to wage war against genocide itself, and they would not rest until every innocent species was free from oppression. Meanwhile, light years away, the Galactic Council was in emergency session. The massive chamber buzzed with panicked voices as representatives from dozens of species tried to understand what had just happened. "This is unprecedented," declared the Vorthok representative, his forearms gesturing wildly. "Unknown species has appeared and destroyed an entire Morvac fleet without warning. They ignored every rule of civilized warfare." The Xantari delegate nodded in agreement. "We must establish formal contact with these humans immediately. They have upset the balance of power in the galaxy." But the Council's attempts to reach Earth were met with polite but firm responses. The humans would communicate with the Council when their current mission was complete. Until then, they had more pressing matters to attend to. Aboard the UES Vengeance, Captain Lee studied the star charts, showing their next target. The Corvian system had been under Morvac occupation for 6 months. Intelligence reports suggested that the survivors were being used as slave labor in mining operations. "To the Corvian system?" he asked his navigation officer. 18 hours. "At maximum speed, sir," came the reply. "Take us there," Captain Lee ordered. "The Corvians have waited long enough for liberation." The human fleet departed the Hellion system with the same efficiency they had shown in battle. They left behind a world saved from extinction, but they carried with them the knowledge that 17 more worlds still suffered under Morvac oppression. As the human ships disappeared into hyperspace, Elder Thion stood in the ruins of his capital city and realized that the galaxy had changed forever. These humans were not conquerors, seeking territory or resources. They were something far more dangerous to those who preyed on the innocent. They were justice incarnate. News of the human victory spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Species that had cowered in fear of the Morvac Empire suddenly found hope. The humans had proven that even the most powerful oppressors could be defeated in the depths of space. Morvac commanders received panicked reports from across their empire. The mysterious humans were moving from system to system, systematically, destroying every Morvac fleet they encountered. No negotiations, no mercy, no survivors. The age of unchecked aggression was ending. The carefully maintained balance of civilized warfare, where the strong could prey on the weak without consequence, had been shattered by a species that refused to accept genocide as inevitable. The humans had entered the galactic community. They had brought their own definition of justice. They did not seek to rule or conquer. They sought only to ensure that innocent species could live without fear of extinction. Admiral Kim stood on his bridge, watching the stars stream past as his fleet raced toward their next target. Behind them, the Hellion people began the long process of rebuilding their civilization. Ahead of them, 17 more worlds waited for liberation. The Deathworlders had joined the cosmic community, and they had made their position clear: attack the defenseless and face extinction. The galaxy would never be the same. The humans were no longer Earth's problem, they were everyone's solution.